Hello, I'm Jyotika. Welcome to Excelling Psychology. In today's class, we will go over October 2025 paper for Oxford AQA IGCSE Psychology. It is for IGCSE students specifically, but even if you're pursuing UK AQA GCSE, it is equally useful to you because most of the topics are overlapping. The question format and answer writing format is almost identical. So this is useful for revision for both IGCSE and GCSE students. I intend to make this a quick lesson. That's why the answers are already written out. I will just guide you through the answers, telling you what are mark scheme requirements, how you should approach the questions. I'll keep my focus on that. So in case you need to read the complete answers, you can pause the video or you can take screenshots, read the answers, then resume the video and hear my commentary on the answers. Even better if you can look at the question or keep your question paper in front of you, write your answer first, then look at the answer on the screen and hear my commentary so that you can check whether you're writing the answers correctly or not. Before I begin, I want you to know that I'm a private tutor for AQA, GCSE, IGCSE, and A-level psychology, both UK boards and Oxford boards. I have more than 12 years of experience. I also sell notes like essay packs, model answers. So my contact details and store details are available in the description box and pin comment below. Okay, let's begin by looking at the solution for paper 1. You know, the first section is on memory, and many times we get MCQ questions. Always for MCQs, my suggestion is one only. First, read the question. Without looking at the response choices, think of what is the answer. Once you have thought of the answer, then read the response choices and see whether what you have thought of is available in the choices or not. And then only write the answer. How this helps is you don't read the response choices and then something feels familiar and you just end up writing that. Rather, you generate your own answer and you make doubly sure by looking at the response choices that it is the correct one, and then you can write the answer in full confidence. It was a very simple question, what is retrieval? So that was asked from the MSM model. From our own memory, we know that retrieval is transferring information from LTM to STM when it has to be used. So if we are saying transferring from LTM to STM, what does it mean? We are recovering it from one store, LTM, so that we can put it to use. So D is the correct response. In the paper, you just have to shade a box, that is all. In question 2, we have a situation and it is asked for 4 marks. It is an EO2 question, application question. I'll just give you a gist of the scenario. You can read it completely by pausing the video. So they talk of a professional footballer who remembers both, of course, how to play football very well. So football skills he remembers, as well as he remembers the names of the countries in which he has played football. So from the types of long-term memory section, we have to identify and outline which types of memory he is showing here. For application questions, what you have to remember is to keep on using wording from the scenario in answering. Most students, when they read the question only and they see football skills, immediately they will link it to procedural memory. So they know this is procedural. And when they see names of the countries, they know it is semantic because it is GK type of information. So most students will identify correctly, but then there are two mistakes they make. Either they just name it, Nico is using procedural and semantic memory. You're definitely not getting 4 marks just for writing that. Or they say he's using procedural memory. They give a general definition of procedural memory, same for semantic. But in Nico's case, where and how he is using procedural memory, that is missing from the answer. So what you have to be mindful of is to link whatever answer you're writing to the situation. Very easy format you can have of writing. Identify the memory which applies, name it, then give example from Nico's situation. Repeat, again identify one memory which he's using, give an example from his situation. So you'll end up with a total of 4 points, name, link, and you'll get 4 marks. Taking a quick look at the model answer, that is exactly what is done here. Football skills means procedural memory, that is naming, because procedural memory involves memory for skills like playing football, not just saying memory for skills like playing football. So using that wording from the situation, it's about football, linking it to the answer. Same way, remembering names of countries is semantic memory, named it. Semantic memory is memory for facts like remembering names of countries, linked it. So 4 marks. Next, similarly, we have a situation question. This time it is from interference explanation of forgetting and context explanation of forgetting. So context dependent forgetting. Same thing has to be done like in the previous answer. Naming, linking, very important. Only it is for 6 marks this time instead of 3 marks. So we have to explain a little more in detail. This time you can think of it as name, explain, link, name, explain, link, 6 marks. So you know you will have to talk about interference. Name, where is the interference? Explain how interference leads to forgetting. Link to the given situation. Same thing, repeat for context. I'll give you a gist of the situation. Tia is learning 2 languages at the same time. So in the exam hall, she ends up making mistakes. Mark, he is also learning 2 subjects. One is a language, one he's learning psychology. He learns the subject and takes the exams in the same classroom. So very clearly, again, when we read it only, there's no doubt, no difficulty in identifying. To Tia, interference will apply. To Mark, context depending forgetting will apply. Mistake comes in writing the answer, not writing in detail. So that I've explained to you how to write in detail. So for Tia name, she's reading similar subjects, so interference will take place. In general, what is interference? When information gets mixed up with each other, linked to Tina. The 2 languages she's learning may interfere with each other. So this much, 3 marks. Then coming to Mark. In Mark's case also this paragraph is not compulsory, but you can include it, that's good. He's learning French and psychology. These are less similar because both are not languages, so interference is less likely to occur. Coming to context. In Mark's case, context explanation is more prominent. Name it. Explain what is the context definition. That learning and recall context should be the same, then memory is facilitated. Because Mark takes the exams in the same classroom as well as where he learns it. So recall and learning are happening in the same classroom. That is why he remembers better. Linking. Again, if you want not compulsory, you can include Tina's case also in context. Tina learns in a classroom but takes exam in exam hall. So her context is not the same. That is why she is getting less marks. So finally, if you want, you can take interference exclusively for Tina, context exclusively for Mark, that is perfectly fine. Or as written on this answer, you can take both context and interference for both Tina and Mark. Let's come to the next question. Very simple one. VSS is one component of working memory. Name one more component. Name type of questions, that also they are for 1 mark only, or sometimes identify is the command term instead of name. Strictly you have to give 1-2 words. You don't even need to write complete sentences. They are descriptive. You just have to remember the relevant term and write it. In working memory model, there is CE, VSS, PL, EB. So any of these you can put. Here we have just written central executive. That's all. Next is evaluate the working memory model for 4 marks. Evaluation questions come a lot, and there's one common question: how many points should I give? There's no hard and fast rule. For 4 marks, if you give a really well developed Peel point, you can get 4 marks. But because this is GCSE, most students don't learn to develop that much. I would strongly recommend 2 points. One for strength, one for weakness. But make sure that you make both relevant to working memory model. What I mean by this is, Name the strength, explain how it applies to working memory model. Name the weakness, explain how it applies to working memory model. 4 points, 4 marks. Most common mistake here is working memory model has research support, strength. Working memory model has been tested in artificial conditions, weakness, finished. No example, no explanation from working memory model, just naming the strength and weakness. That, if the examiner is generous, will get you 1 mark, otherwise it will get you 0. So let's see how to write this answer. Yes, strength is that it is supported by studies, then link it. Which studies have supported working memory model in particular? Dual task studies have supported them. If you remember a specific study like say Badley and Hitch's study in which participants had to trace an F with their eyes visuospatial sketchpad, at the same time they had to hear a passage and repeat that with their phonological loop. Give the example of that specific study if you remember it. If not, you can put it this way, that in general in dual task studies people are asked to do 2 tasks at the same time, and it is found that if one uses the PL and one uses the CE, or one uses PL, one uses VSS, then they are able to carry it on well. If both use the same resource, like both use PL or both use VSS, then people find it difficult to perform. Same way weakness, yes, studies have been artificial, but this is a criticism we can give in many places. We can give for MSM also this criticism, and in so many other topics, even in social psychology and elsewhere. How working memory research has been artificial, we have to explain that. So again, you can give a specific study, like say you can give Badley and Hitch, and you can explain how tracking an F and hearing and repeating passages is something we would not do in everyday life. Or in general, many times it involves, if you have learned phonological similarity, so hearing rhyming letters, or it can involve repeating lists of digits. Those tasks in general tend to be very artificial, and in real life we use working memory for solving maths problems, for learning new lessons like passages of text, which is not done in these lab studies. So that is why we might not be able to generalize findings to everyday life. Next was the 9 marker question. After the 12 marker, the biggest question can come is the 9 marker. So typically it involves description and evaluation. They ask for description of Murdoch study and its evaluation. In a 9 marker description, AO1 is for 5 marks and evaluation AO3 is for 4 marks. I strongly recommend, as you can see on the screen, description for any study. Murdoch is a study, not a theory. Aim, procedure, results, conclusion. Fixed. So you don't need to worry about word count, sentence number, nothing. Just make sure you're covering all 4 of these and you're good to go for AO1. Don't miss out on any. For AO3, because it's an essay question, 2 points. Already I told you for 4 marks, 2 points are enough in evaluation. 1 strength, 1 weakness, preferably, though both can be strengths and weaknesses. Develop them well. It's an essay question. Little more than what you develop for an ordinary 4 marker. Try to give more specific examples, more reasoning in an essay answer. That is what I would suggest. I personally do not recommend 4-5 strengths and weaknesses each in one line. That's a breadth approach that does not show understanding. Depth approach is always preferable. Take only 1 strength, 1 weakness, but explain it well to show you know how to apply it to this particular theory. That shows your true knowledge. So for description, I can't go through the whole answer, it'll become very long, but aim wise, he was looking at serial position effect. Participants had to learn lists of words, that is procedure, they had to do free recall. Results, he found primacy effect, they would rehearse the words, they would get transferred to LTM. That's the first few words on the list. For the last few words, they could remember from short-term memory itself, recency effect. Conclusion, it supports the multi-store model because it shows LTM, STM are 2 separate stores of information. So something to that effect from whichever textbook or notes you're learning from, just summarize all of this. That completes AO1, 5 marks. If you write like this, 5 marks. Strength, it is very controlled. Now what I mean by developing the point. Same list of words are given, same instructions are given how to recall, like free recall is allowed, do not have to recall in order. So every participant gets the same instructions. That is how it's very controlled and it increases reliability. Don't just write very controlled increases reliability. What was controlled? How does it increase reliability? See the development of the point. Examples are there to show what was controlled. Explanation is there how it increases reliability, because then these things are not confounding or extraneous variables. They have been controlled. That is why reliability increases. So make sure to write like this. Weaknesses, it is artificial. Again, what is artificial? In real life, people will not remember lists of words like Murdoch gave. What would they remember in real life? Shopping list, name of people, textbook material. So reasoning is that findings may not generalize because real world tasks are very different from lab tasks. That was the first section, memory. Now we have the next section, perception. Now we'll be able to go a little faster because we have seen various types of questions and how to write answers. Explain two differences question is there. It is a descriptive question from the textbook. Initially, only in the chapter, you learn how sensation and perception are different. The only suggestion I can give whenever you have a contrast or difference type of question, make sure to cover both the concepts that are being compared. Many students have a very bad habit of taking only one concept and not completing it by contrasting it against the other. For example, they'll say sensation is a biological process. What is perception? That they will not say. You have to say what is perception also. Perception is psychological process. Or they'll say sensation is biological process, perception is not. Okay, it's not a biological process, but what is it? Psychological process. You have to mention that. Another is sensation involves receiving information through senses. Don't stop at that. Perception. It involves organizing and making sense of information. In perception, it's very common to have stimuli based questions. There's a picture, you have to look at it and you have to answer something. In this photo, we can see some objects are looking small, some are looking big. So how we use one eye or monocular cues to gauge the size and the distance of the objects, they're asking us that. Now we have learned about many monocular cues. We have learned about occlusion, height and plane, size, constancy, contrast, texture, gradient. Out of that, they've specified in the paper we have to take only two, height and plane and occlusion. In this situation, they have asked this, though it is a photo, it is the same as if they would have given a scenario. What I would have told you, you have to use wording from the scenario to answer. So here, what you can see in the image, you have to use that to answer. For example, you can't just say things which are higher on the plane are looking smaller, things which are lower on the plane are looking bigger. What things are you talking about? What are the things in this photo? Name them. Show you are able to apply to the photo. If you're just saying things, you're not about the cars, trees, or buildings that you can see in the photo. How do we know you're just writing a rote learned answer of description, or you actually know how to apply to a given new photo? So show how you're able to apply it. So again, just take a look at how the answer is written. Distant cars, trees, buildings are looking far away, but the closer trees, buildings, and cars are looking nearby. The lower ones are looking nearby. So you have to mention cars, trees, and buildings. Same way for occlusion. The nearby trees are hiding parts of the trees behind them, right? The nearby trees which are there, they are obscuring some part of the behind trees. That is one example of how the nearby trees, the ones we can see in full, are looking bigger, and the ones which we can only partially see are looking further away. Coming to a descriptive question, outline 2 marks. What is retinal disparity? Only suggestion for these type of answers, of course, you will define retinal disparity. Just give 1 more point for 1 mark. So of course, retinal disparity is comparing the different images on left and right eyes to decide the nearness or farness of an object. And either we can give an example of this, you can do a drawing also for perception, like how a box can look different in different eyes, or you can just explain this further, that the brain combines the two images and sees the distance between them to judge how close or far the object is. So it just sees whether the right and left eyes are getting the same image or they're getting very different images from each other, and that is how it judges whether the object is close or far. This one I feel comes very frequently, Ponzo illusion. So most of you must have anticipated this also if you have attempted it before, or like in your school or something, you would anticipate it to come in the paper. It's for 3 marks. Explain how Ponzo illusion works. Even if they would have not given the image here, it wouldn't make a difference. We would have to define what the image is because Ponzo illusion is a fixed image. It's for 3 marks. Make sure to give 3 points for 3 marks. It's nothing. It's just you have to write what you have learnt in the textbook. Converging lines you must mention. Those are only the context. Parallel lines you must mention. And then of course you have to explain why that illusion is happening, because where the lines are converging it gives a narrower context, so the line looks bigger, but where the lines are furthering from each other, there the context looks wider, and that's why the parallel line looks smaller. Must mention, although both the lines, the parallel lines are same in length. Then there is an application question for 3 marks. We have to use motion parallax to explain. Gist of the situation: some man is looking from a train, some things are seeming to move fast, some are seeming to move slow. Prototypical motion parallax situation. 3 marks, like I've told you, make sure to name, explain, link. So first you have to name motion parallax is a depth cube. Then just explain what it is. Objects that are close will appear to move fast. Objects that are far away will appear to move slow. Link it. What is happening with this man? They have mentioned something about track, house, trees. So use those wordings to explain. Like you can see, like quickly to take one example, houses are close, so the houses seem to be moving fast. Remaining objects you can explain in the same way. Then there is a very straightforward question again, Brunner and Minturn study, the 13 and B study. One thing you have to be careful. See, they are asking for findings. I always tell this to my students, do not waste time outlining aim, procedure, conclusion when they have said they want findings. Give only the findings, rest of it will be ignored. You won't be given credit. I know sometimes the mark scheme includes a bit of the procedure, like they want to give grace marks, but not always. So you prepare in a way that the mark scheme is not going to give allowance for anything leaving the findings. 3 marks, 3 findings you can give. One, those who saw letters were expecting to see a letter, so they saw the ambiguous figure as B. Those who were seeing numbers, expecting numbers, they saw the ambiguous figure as 13. Those in the control condition who saw neither letters nor numbers, some of them saw it as 13, some of them saw it as B. 3 findings, 3 marks, as simple as that. Then evaluation question, again the most common FAQ that comes up is how many points should we give if it is 6 marks. Here I don't mind any breadth depth approach because this is not an essay as such. Either take 3 points and develop them like we do for a 4 marker, name the strength or weakness, explain. Try to include both, like at least one strength and one weakness. Or take a depth approach, take only 2 points, one strength, one weakness, but then make sure to give as much detail as to justify 6 marks. Right now I have taken 3-point approach. One strength is it's a lab setting study. Make sure to be specific. What is control? They get to see the same ambiguous figure. Before seeing the ambiguous figure, the letters, numbers they get to see are the same, which increases reliability. Another strength, it has useful applications. In eyewitness testimony especially, we know if people are primed to see things in a certain way, they might misreport what they've seen in a crime situation. That's the message we get. So we should make sure they are not primed in any way before giving their testimony. Weakness, again, artificial tasks. In Brunner, what was artificial? Make sure to point that. Don't give generic points. It was artificial, so it has low ecological validity. Ambiguous figures seen B13 confusion does not happen in real life, so it lacks ecological validity. Next section was biopsych. Okay, let's go over it quickly. What is localization? For 2 marks, make sure to give a clear definition. At least 2 points should be there. So of course, one will be specific brain areas, second will be specific functions, that is behaviors or cognitions. Then very simple question, one example of function that is localized. Language production, why? Because Broca's area is what comes to mind easily, but anything you can give. You could also give aggression because frontal lobe, Phineas gauge. You could give language comprehension, Wernicke's area. You could give movement, again frontal lobe. Just make sure of one thing. Some students make mistake. They've said give example of a function that is localized. Students will give name of the brain part instead of giving the function. They're asking for the function, meaning the behavior or mental process. So don't write Broca's area, don't write frontal lobe, don't write Wernicke's area. Those are the brain parts. Those are not the functions. Which are the functions corresponding to those brain parts? You have to write that. Okay, next is just describe one scanning technique. It's not just name, it is describe, and you can see it for 2 marks. If it was just name, they would have given 1 mark. So don't just name fMRI and leave it. fMRI, then explain what it does. It sees blood oxygen where it is reaching more when someone's doing a task to identify which area is involved in solving the task. Alternatively, you could take EEG. If that is what you're taking, you'll have to describe it identifies wavelengths or brain activity pattern, neuron firing rate to see states of alertness. Alternatively, you could take PET, you could describe radioactive injection has to be taken, and from the radioactive signals that are emitted, we can figure out which brain part is active while doing a task. Then we have an application question. The gist of it is someone was riding an accident, riding a bicycle, incurred an accident, damaged an area of the brain, which is specifically left frontal lobe. What might be the impact? For 4 marks, name, explain, means at least 2 impacts we should give to cover 2 points. If left frontal lobe is getting damaged, first thing that will come to mind is Broca's area. So it seems Chen will have problem in speaking. Another which will come to mind is movement, because again it's frontal lobe, but left side, meaning contralateral principle, right side of the body will be difficult to move for Chen. Okay, next was about Hebb's theory. It's a simple situation. Someone's playing piano for many years. First they have difficulty, they have to focus on one key, then they're able to do it automatically. Don't explain it from point of view of procedural skills. Sometimes students don't remember, for example, what is Hebb's theory, so they start writing procedural skills. You won't get any marks. If you don't remember, go to the next question, come back when you remember later. From Hebb's theory point of view, what Hebb has said that neuronal strengthening will happen. So first she had to activate one neuron by learning one skill very carefully, but then eventually by repeating it so many times she formed engram. Make sure to use key terms when you're writing. In Hebb's theory, engram, which is the memory trace, you must mention that has been formed over the years as she has practiced so much. And now because of that memory trace getting activated very fast, she does not have to consume too much time or put too much effort to play the piano. Now it comes automatically to her. Okay, here we had the 12 marker in biopsychology, Penfield's theory, description and evaluation. For AO1, 6 marks, same thing I'll tell you which I told you for 9 marker. It's a study, aim, procedure, results, conclusion. That does not change, 5 marks or 6 marks. For evaluation, either take 4 points here, like for 9 mark I told you can take 2 points. Because AO3 was 4 marks, here it is 6 marks, you can take 3 to 4 points. Or depth approach, 6 marks, take 2 points, but then make sure you develop well enough to justify 6 marks. So very quickly to summarize, Penfield study aim was to see localization of function in the procedure. Participants were undergoing brain surgery, they were studied live. In the results, it was found many different areas are connected with many different functions. For example, temporal lobe was associated with audition and memory and so forth. That is the AO1 part. AO3, strength can be, while doing surgery, he recorded brain activity, means immediate recording of activity increases validity because it's direct evidence of changes in the brain. You can compare with post-mortem also. Another strength, especially if you're taking a depth approach, you want to take selective points but you want to write a lot, then compare with post-mortem or slower scanning methods like EEG versus live surgery and seeing how people's brain is responding. Okay, another strength is real world application. Definitely, if people are having damage to specific areas, then we can help them to strengthen those areas. Weakness is all his patients were undergoing surgery because they had epilepsy. So whether we can generalize to people who don't have epilepsy, the larger population, we are not sure because their brains might be different to begin with. And of course, findings are not consistent. Other researchers who have replicated, they have found that simulation of same areas, for example, temporal lobe, does not always result in audition or memory only. Sometimes when they stimulate the temporal lobe, they get some other results. Like people might even perceive seeing things when the temporal lobe is stimulated, which led to ultimately the realization that there is overlap. Some visual functions are performed not only by occipital lobe but by temporal lobe also. I know I've rushed through it. You can read the points carefully. Okay, coming to everyone's favorite section, research methods. So there's this whole situation with the table. Gist of the situation is the researcher was looking at sleep quality and happiness of participants, correlational study. So scores have been obtained for both, no manipulation. First, they've asked to draw a scatter graph. I've drawn the scatter graph as such. What you have to make sure that I'll point out, x-axis you must label one variable, it's interchangeable. Instead of sleep quality, you could put happiness on the x-axis. Instead of happiness on the y-axis, you could put sleep quality, but make sure one variable goes on one axis. Title the graph relationship between sleep quality and happiness. Even better, a scatter graph showing relationship between sleep quality and happiness. All the points are given on the table. Make sure to plot the points correctly. For example, first participant, happiness score is 6 and sleep quality score is 47. So for the first participant, we can see sleep quality going at 6, happiness score going at 6 and sleep quality going at 47. So here you can see participants, one plot is there with an X. You could also plot it with a dot or any other symbol. That's fine. One more I'll show you. Participant 2 scored 40 and 5. So you can see on the y-axis 5 and here 40. This is participant 2. So in the same way, you can see all participants' points have been plotted accurately as given on the table. It does not have to be hypothetical. Anywhere you pull out the points, it's not like that. They have given a table so that you plot it accurately. And as far as scaling is concerned, because sleep scores are out of 50, so 5 to scaling of 5, I have taken 5 units in 1 centimeter, so 10 to 50. And happiness score is just 1 to 10, so 1 centimeter is 1 point. You can adjust the scale how you want, just make sure in the end the points are coming out accurately. Then they've just asked for what does the table show, meaning they're asking for conclusion or interpretation, like inference. So don't just repeat the results. This participant got this much, that participant got this much. What are you able to conclude about the correlation between happiness and sleep? They're asking for that in this question. So make sure you write that. Positive correlation is emerging, of course, because the scatters are going upward. That's clear on the table also. As happiness is increasing, sleep quality is increasing. So just specify clearly positive or direct correlation and explain in words also what it means for second marks. As sleep quality improves, happiness scores improve. Next, they have asked what type of data the researcher has collected. It's an MCQ. Before looking at the response choices, one, we know they have collected quantitative data. It's correlation study, and just now we saw both variables were on scores, numbers, so quantitative. Another, we know the researcher has directly collected data, not borrowed from some other researcher's data. So primary. So if we look at the response choices B and D. Next, they have explained the situation a little further. Further, the researcher wants to see if measuring happiness using different method would be better. So instead of doing scale, they start using observation. Then they ask what is meant by categories of behaviors. See, these type of questions, you have a choice. Do you want to link it back to the situation or not? They have not said in this study or link it back to the situation. That's why you have a choice. So right now I have not linked it back, but you can. General definition of categories of behaviors is having like clear behaviors which can be marked off on a checklist. And to give one more point for 2 marks, they are decided before the observation can occur. Alternatively, if you want to link it back, you can give an example from the situation. Someone smiling would be a clear and observable behavior that would indicate happiness. So that example can be for a 2nd mark. Explain why the psychologist should work with another observer. Whenever they say an observation, 2 psychologists are there. What comes to mind? Inter-rater reliability. So we can name that for 1 mark and 2nd mark because both will record similar behavior, so they can cross-check whether their findings are consistent with each other. You can link it back again. You can mention happiness. Both will record same behaviors like smiling how frequently, for example, smiling is occurring, and then they'll check for consistency. What is one strength of using observation? You can link to, you can compare with self-report, because that is what the psychologist was using initially. It records actual behavior, so it is unbiased, so it is more valid. If you want to link to the situation, happiness will be recorded in an unbiased way, not from perhaps socially desirable answers that participants might give. Two weaknesses of using observation. Observer bias can be there, so we can name it, then we can expand. They might just focus on certain behaviors they deem as important instead of looking at all behaviors. In this situation, they will prefix that only certain facial expressions, for example, show happiness, then they'd look out only for those. So that would be biased. Second, participants can change their behavior if they know they are being observed. We don't know whether they're disclosing the observation to participants or not. So demand characteristics can occur. If we want to link to the situation, if they know researchers are checking their happiness, they might deliberately smile or give positive facial expressions. In this situation, psychologists use random sampling. What is random sampling? See, random sampling, you must always specify every member of population has equal chance of being selected. Don't give very broad definitions like unpredictable way of selection, fair way of selection. There's a very specific definition. Every member equal chance. This wording should come. Example can be drawing lots from a hat, spinning the wheel, something like that. Or to link to this situation, choosing people from a particular city using a random number generator to assess their happiness. Two weaknesses of random sampling. One, it is difficult to obtain a truly random sample because many people can refuse participation even after being selected, which makes us repeat the process and we can end up with a biased sample. Another weakness can be it is time consuming and expensive. Populations can be very large, so it can be very difficult to acquire the names of everybody and then make a random selection from so many people. Name one more method of sampling. Any. We have learned so many sampling methods in the syllabus. Opportunity, stratified, purposive, volunteer, snowball. You can give any. Opportunity is the easiest I have given here. Okay, so that is it for this paper. If you have any comments or questions, you can leave them in the comments box below. Please do not contact me personally for any comments about the videos. I will not be able to respond. And very soon in the next video itself, I will be uploading paper 2 also for October 25, and I do intend to then upload papers 1 and 2 for May 2025. So you can stay tuned on this channel and you can save the playlist which is for Oxford AQA and AQA GCSE Psychology. I will see you soon. Goodbye.